Hey, welcome back to VELSHI and RHULE. We have been focused on the Kavanaugh process, but while we've been doing that, a lot has been happening elsewhere in the Trump administration. In other news, a child migrant camp that was supposed to shut down weeks ago is expanding to house more unaccompanied children. The Guardian has reported the camp is located in the border town of Tornillo, Texas, and it originally had a capacity of 400, but it's now grown to 2,400 beds, and it's set to remain open until the end of the year. A federal judge has temporarily stopped the Trump administration's move to end protections for immigrants from 4 countries to live and work legally in the United States. About 300,000 people from Sudan, Nicaragua, Haiti, and El Salvador had received those protections. The judge cites the president's alleged description of African and Caribbean nations as, quote, S-hole countries in the lawsuit. The Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights is investigating whether a school's transgender bathroom policy led to the alleged sexual assault of a 5-year-old girl. The investigation opened last month as Politico reported that Secretary of Education Betsy Devos had halted at least 5 cases involving transgender students who were denied bathroom access. And the Violence Against Women Act has been temporarily extended until December 7th, but is still at risk of expiring at that time. The law funds social service agencies that help victims of sexual assault and domestic violence, like rape crisis centers, shelters, and legal assistance programs. A number of changes have also been underway at the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. The agency is planning to eliminate the Science Advisor's Office under its Office of Research and Development, a role meant to advise the administrator and to ensure that the best science is used to inform environmental policies. You'd think that was important, right? But that's not all. The Trump administration is also moving to weaken U.S. standards for radiation exposure. Experts say the EPA's proposal would increase radiation exposure to medical, oil, and gas workers. Lots going on. Joining me now is the astrophysicist and author of Accessory to War, among other books, but this is his new one, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Neil, good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Lots is happening at the EPA. They placed the...
By the way, the universe is fine.
The universe is fine. It's Earth is the problem.
Just make that clear.
I just want to sort of get your impression of the relationship between government and good science and good policy.
Well, so I, as a scientist, and my colleagues, we conduct science generally unmonitored by a government agency, which is the effects of our creativity and where we want to take our curiosity. But it tends to be that the biggest funded science is what comes out of a government. And this can move the center of mass of a field in ways that individual workers in laboratories
Because governments sometimes can do things that aren't profitable or that may have greater good.
Correct. They have deeper pockets, or they have geopolitical reasons for it. We went to the moon, not for science, but we got some science done along the way. It piggybacked it. So it becomes an issue for the future of a nation if the government doesn't understand what science is or how and why it works. It means that nation will not participate on the leading frontier of how science and technology will transform civilization. Other countries will. By the way, we were at that frontier for most of the second half of the 20th century. And it's the era that I grew up in. You would have had some years in there noticing it. You're a young fellow, though. And so that's the America that I knew and loved. No one was debating the objective truths of science. That people said, put more science in, more engineering. That's going to shape our future. You see this now? So on a slide.
Yeah, it's interesting, though, because your book does talk about how scientists and the military have worked together.
Yes, and that's been well known for the traditional science fields like physics and chemistry. But in my field, you wouldn't think that we would have anything to do with it, except we did. And you go far enough back, navigation was a fundamental activity of empire building. But how do you know where you are on Earth? You get that from the sky. Because we knew what stars you would see and planets at different parts of the Earth. And so you would infer that where you were on Earth from that, and that's how you knew where's your enemy, where's your new conquest, where's the new land you're acquiring. And this is how empires were built, hegemony was extended, and fast forward that to today. Coordinates on Earth still matter. The Air Force, the U.S. Space Command of Air Force put up GPS satellites. And the Second Gulf War, 2003, was a precision targeting war.
We saw images where you'd bomb something and it would go right down a chimney.
Right down a chimney. All of this was enabled, empowered by space assets that had been put up. So we have common concerns. The astrophysicist worries about and thinks about the universe. So does the military as the next regime of high ground.
You say the universe is okay. Earth has some problems. This week, representatives from more than than 130 countries are meeting in South Korea to discuss climate change. There are many who think that's the most dangerous piece of the U.S. is becoming divorced from science. It's
destabilizing. So a couple of things. First, I don't mind people arguing on political lines what you do about climate change.
Right.
Okay? Do you put in carbon credits or tariffs on solar panels? Do you invest in your economy to transition? Those have political solutions. But when I see politicians arguing over the objectively identified truths of science, that you are just going to lag behind the rest of the world that understands that. By the way, you're lagging behind two very important elements of modern life. Insurance companies know all about global warming and what its consequences are. And so too does the military. Because if you have rising rising storm waters that didn't used to get to those levels, and you displace whole populations, they become migrants. They become not immigrants.
Refugees.
Refugees. Yeah. They become refugees, destabilizing the region. The military knows all about this. So you can have political posturing where you're ignoring it because you get votes for it, but at the end of the day, you cannot fool Mother Nature.
I thought your tweet response to the Trump administration tossing around the idea of a space force was pretty remarkable. You said that perhaps we should be thinking about, here, I'm okay with the space force, but what we need most is a truth force, one that defends against all enemies of accurate information, both foreign and domestic.
That's right. Just trying to put that out there. By the way, we have something such as that. It's the National Academy of Sciences.
Right.
They were chartered by Abraham Lincoln in 1863. Clearly he had other things on his plate at the time, but he said, we need science to help us, the future governance of this nation.
He said liberty is dependent on science. I was at the National Academy of Sciences on Monday discussing internet security. So yes, there are lots of people who are still very devoted to this, and you are one of them. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good.
Neil deGrasse Tyson. The new book is Accessory to War. All right, in Washington, D.C., protesters have reached the Supreme Court. Let's take a look at some live pictures as they stand against the potential confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh. Republicans are also getting fired up about this. GOP aides say the battle over the Kavanaugh nomination is re-energizing the party just in time for the midterms. But can it last long enough to bring Republicans out to the polls? We'll discuss that next. But first,